Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Welcome to Returning Home. I'm your host, Natalie, and we are speaking to you from the wonderful Chol haMoed Pesach holiday time. This is a very special time in Israel. I did not grow up religious, okay? So maybe in America, in the religious community, it's also exciting and a big deal. But here in Israel, it doesn't matter if you're religious or not. Everyone celebrates Passover and everyone is on vacation. So it's like, almost like spring is in the air, spring break, that kind of energy. It's awesome. Families and friends are going everywhere in Israel. And this past year has been hard. You've had the corona pandemic and things have been closed and shut down. And all these limitations were placed on us for travel. And it's gone because half the country is vaccinated. So everything now is open. Eilat, the Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee, packed, people tenting, camping. I have 2 teenager sons there. They went with their friends. All the popular tourist sites are open. Here we have the Susia, ancient city of Susia. And there's a climbing wall. And there's an archaeological dig. And yesterday there were 1,000 visitors here, okay? My 15-year-old is working there parking cars. And I don't mean he's driving those cars. I mean, he's standing there pointing at people where to park their cars. Because there's, very hard to park. There's no room. My 13-year-old daughter is waitressing at the restaurant, the only restaurant in Har Hebron, Cafe Ronel. She's there across the street, and she's an English speaker, so they really value her. A lot of the visitors are from all over the world. There's one restaurant in our region, and everyone's out and about. The sun is shining, everything's green. It's just awesome, and it's such a great feeling to see my own children so independent, and they find these jobs on their own. I don't do anything to help them. And they've always been like this. I'm very proud of that. My husband and I were talking about it, how he thinks that's not unusual. You don't think it's unusual if the child is lazy. Now, I don't agree. I think there are a lot of kids that are lazy, and the parents accept that. I've seen parents also see their kids just don't want to work. They're embarrassed. They're lazy. They're not motivated. A lot of excuses, but we don't have that, and I think it's a good thing. Not only do I think it's a good thing, I think it's something you should tell your children. They should hear it. When you're proud of them, you should tell them. Stick around. We'll be right back.
The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago and is coming true today. Shalom. Join me, Josh Wander, on Israel Unplugged. Listen in as we delve into the spiritual and physical aspects of the Jewish return to Zion. We'll discuss the biblically mandated, historic, and of course practical understandings of this incredible transition from exile to redemption. That's Israel Unplugged, every Monday on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
Welcome back to Returning Home. I have on the line Aleeza Bracha, who moved with her family to Pardes Chana about 3, maybe 4 weeks ago now. How long has it been, Aleeza?
Since March 1st.
A whole month.
A whole month.
Okay, so tell me your latest adventures. The last we spoke, you had just received your things. Your lift arrived, and you were unpacking it, and it was funny to hear because you have such, what do I say? You are the example of someone who lived well in America, and you're going to live well here. And I was talking about that earlier, like not everyone has that.
I think it's mostly about attitude, right? You could live anywhere in the world, and you could be happy or you could be miserable. And I think no matter if I lived well there, why did I live well there? It wasn't about. We're not talking about a standard of living when you say lived well. It's about joy. That I lived with joy. And if you do that there, then wherever you go, you take it with you. So we're going to do the same thing here. So even if things are upside down or all over the place, we're still going to live well, as you call it, because it's something, it's a state of being, right? It's not where you are, it's who you are. I think that that's more what it's about.
Well, yeah, but you have to remember on our talk last time, you were going on and on about your unhappiness with the house because the tracine didn't work, and then you were just so happy that you had all your stuff. So it sounded like you were tying joy in with stuff, and I have the total, it's not like that at all. You said it's a state of mind. It is a state of mind. It's only a state of mind.
Right. Well, even with the stuff and the tracine and things not working, I did come to a place of saying, okay, if this is going to be my place, then I'm going to make it work. I didn't want that. It wasn't what I wanted, and it wasn't what I was, hoping for. But I was willing to live with it if I had to. But I was doing everything in my power not to. So,
all right. Well, look.
I think we have to live with these opposites.
Yeah. Okay. Look, everyone has their own their own life, and I guess their own surroundings, things that make them who they are, So tell me what Pesach was like for you, your first Pesach in Israel.
So Pesach is very lovely. We can't do any of the meals at home because we don't have any appliances yet, because in Israel you have to rent your own, or not rent, buy your own appliances. Even if you're renting your house or your apartment, it doesn't get left for you. In America, they leave it for you.
Right. Okay. You covered that last time. So you're in a house, but there's nothing there yet. Okay. So you have to eat out for now.
So we've been invited out for all of our meals. The families that we've met have been so warm and so lovely. Our kids made friends. They're telling us, they're like, I can't believe it. We came to a new country and we already have so many friends. We met so many people, and everybody that we meet keeps, oh, do you know so-and-so? Oh, wait, let me make an introduction.
Good.
We've been passed around a little bit, and people have also spontaneously just popped by, like, hi, I'm your neighbor. I live right over there. You see that road? Just cross that road and to the left. Come over anytime. Come visit us. If you need a cup of coffee or you want to just say hello, come. We're happy to have you.
Okay, now, are the people coming over and doing this, are these English speakers?
They are.
So that's an advantage, I think, of living in a small town. You're in a small Israeli town. It is not one of the hotspots of, English, North American English speakers, right? So they're going to come out of the woodwork for a family like you.
Right. So there's the Pardes Chana, there's a mommy's group, there's a daddy's group, and there's like the generic information about the group. And so when we came, they're like, new family, introduce yourselves. And then people started to hear about us, and we started to get invitations and welcomes. And
good.
And it was really very welcoming and really very wonderful.
Yeah, that's good. That's like a yeshuv. That's very nice. That's what you need.
Pardes Chana is actually a bigger community. It's not as small as everybody thinks. I think there's 40,000 people in this, whole entire community. The religious community is much smaller, and the English-speaking community is much smaller. It's really, like you said, it's really an Israeli town, but there's pockets of everybody, and people have just been so welcoming. So we ate all of our meals out. We stopped unpacking, and then this week, because it's Chol haMoed, we started doing trips with friends, and we just met up with a whole bunch of friends. Some are in Efrat, and some are in the Pardes Chana, and we all met in Netanya, and we went to this park. It was big, it was beautiful, and we had a great time. And we were very Israeli about it. Like, it's an enormous park with lots going on, and the kids were running everywhere, which makes my heart pound because...
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, tell me what this means when you say very Israeli about it. I don't know what that means. What do you mean?
Very Israeli. Yeah, it means to be laid back and relaxed. That not every child is within eyesight, and they might disappear for the next hour and just be playing, and you can't see them, and you don't know where they are because it's a very large area. There's so many kids, and if you chase one kid, you lose another.
What you mean is you don't have your eyes on your kids.
I mean,
you don't have your eyes on your kids. Now, say it. Just, you don't have your eyes on your kids. Now, that is one thing. It's a very different culture here. You don't need to have your eyes on your kids. It is so the weight that you carry around all your life over there. Now you feel it, right?
So, yes, and what happens when you don't have your eyes on your kids? Or when it's also like everybody's watching everybody. So there were 4 or 5 families that were all there together, and we were barbecuing, and the kids were running on the playground, and there was a bouncy house, and there were swings, and there were so many things that were there. And when we wrapped up to go, like in a big bundle, all of us were going with all of the chairs and the grill that we brought and everything that we're carrying. And, you're counting all the kids. Okay, you got these. Okay, you guys are ahead. We're behind. Whatever. Long story short, a little bit after we left the park, some of my kids went with one family, and they went to their apartment, and they were all hanging out, and I get a call from the mom. Where's your son? He's with you, right? And I'm like, no, they all went with you.
Oh God. You left the kid behind. You left one at the park. Okay.
Right, so the one that was with everybody wasn't with everybody. He was at the park. And what's P.S. to the story? He told us that some older girls said, where's your family? He said they were sitting right here. They said, we'll help you find, your parents. What's their phone number? And he looks at them and he's like, I don't know. Like, I have their American phone number in my head. I didn't memorize their Israeli phone number. And I have to tell you, a while ago we went out, like a week and a half ago, we went out and we gave the kids all of our phone numbers. We stuffed it in their shoes, and we had, little pieces of paper with them. And this time we didn't do that. And so he just said, I don't know. And the girls walked around until, we came back and we found him.
How old was this boy?
We're with him.
How old?
7.
Oh my God.
7. He's our youngest.
Oh God.
I said, well, they found him and they were watching, the kids were skateboarding, and because there was also a skateboard park. And he said, but it was okay because I was watching them skateboard, and that was really cool.
Now listen, this is just such a perfect example, I think, Aleeza, what you've provided to everyone here. Is in Israel, my parents used to say this, it's like the 1950s in America. No one here even thinks about the what's it called, a crime of kidnapping. That does not happen. There is no such thing.
Our hearts skipped a beat, and we had, until, it took, the park was enormous, and it took, at least 10 to 12 minutes to locate him. And so for that time period, we're still with our American thinking and had that moment of like, okay, it's going to be fine, talk yourself down,
right.
Crazy thinking.
Right.
Be okay.
Right, yeah. Yeah, but it is so great here. Here, you get scared about real danger, okay? Like when you're at the beach and your child doesn't come out of the water. That's what you get scared about because that does happen. And you're going to see, you're beginning now summer season. There was a drowning yesterday in the Dead Sea. I don't know if you heard a baby. Things start to happen here because people here are so trusting. And in a way, they're reckless. People go into oceans here when there's no lifeguard. Okay? I've heard horrible stories. I'm with the medics. I know what happens. But these are things that happen here. It's not like man against man crime. There's no theft. There's no kidnapping. There's nothing like that. So your son, if you ever leave him at a park, you're right. A neighbor will take him home. They will find you. And he can trust. And I always tell my own children, trust a mother. Go to a mommy. Go to a mommy.
That's so smart. And this was 3 teenage girls.
Right.
So sweet, and they were with him the whole time. So it was a tremendous blessing, but it was one of those things where there were so many people, and we were broken up into different groups.
Well, we've all seen the movie Home Alone, Aleeza. Home Alone, right? Come on, it happens.
Right, it happens.
Oh. So tell me about the snow. I saw you posted on Facebook yesterday that you were at a parking lot and there was snow there. What is that?
Right, so apparently the custom in Israel is that they deliver mounds and mounds of snow to random parking lots in different cities on haMoed Pesach, and the kids get to go enjoy snow one time during the year.
That is funny.
My kids, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's snow in the parking lot. It's going to be so exciting. Let's go. And they're like, Ima, it snows like 14 times in Philadelphia. Like, we're sick of snow. We just came here and we went skiing and we played in snow. Like, I'm bored of snow already. I'm like, no, it's going to be fun. We're going to go anyway. And I told them, don't bring gloves. We don't need any of this. You're never going to use it. Never. Famous last words. So we go to play in the snow, and it was fantastic. Everybody's shoes are soaking wet because we don't have our snow boots, and our hands are freezing cold. Had a blast.
Now that is funny what you wrote, how you told the kids and you didn't, and it's so funny how you told them not to bring any of their snow gear, okay? But at the same time, you told me you got the largest container possible. Why would you not bring gloves and boots? And then you're thinking,
because there's no closet, so you can get it on the list and you can get it to Israel. But where are you going to store it?
In a box.
The whole thing, right?
In a box.
In a box.
Stick around. We'll be back right after these messages. And we'll be speaking with someone who has a very different aliyah story.
Hi everyone, this is Andrea Simento from Jerusalem, inviting you to drop everything and join me on my show, Pull Up a Chair. We'll visit this week's quirky stories, meet fabulous guests, and discover my Israel. Together we'll laugh, shout, and explain the topics that make us say, hey, we've got to talk about that. So get comfortable and pull up a chair with me, Andrea Simento, every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
Welcome to Returning Home. I'm your host, Natalie. Joining us today is Sinai Yarus. Sinai is a patent engineer. I am somehow involved in patents. I met Sinai through work years ago. That was pretty funny, huh? And Sinai's been here a long time. He made aliyah in 1982 at the age of 21. He is originally from Cleveland and today lives in Tekoa. Sinai, I want to hear all about your aliyah story. Welcome to the show.
Well, it's good to be here, Natalie. I was thinking about this after we spoke earlier today, and I realized that when I made aliyah, I had $8,000 in the bank, which I guess if I had been sane, I would have said, well, that's not enough money to move to another country, but I just did it, and it all worked out okay.
Yeah. We're gonna hit on that. You're gonna tell me that little story in just a minute. But first, just take us back to why you came at that age, at that time, and how were you raised? Were you raised with Israel in your home? Were you raised a religious Jew? How were you?
Yeah, well, I went to a synagogue that had the word Orthodox in the name of the synagogue, which in America meant that they chained the parking lot shut on Shabbos and everyone parked on the sidewalk. But the type of Jewish education that I was getting was actually, in retrospect, very, very progressive. There was a lot of discussion about the role of the then emerging state of Israel in the fate of the Jewish people around the world in general, and American Jewry in particular. And we were often asked to do exercises like rate ourselves. Did we consider ourselves primarily a human being, an American, or a Jew?
Really?
And those things, those kinds of questions, when they ask you that when you're like 7 years old, you think about that for a long time afterwards. So, and then I remember also, like in Sunday school, they would bring in copies of the Jerusalem Post and tell us stories about the prime minister and the president and generals from Israel. And as a little kid, I was very skeptical of whether this was like a real thing that's actually happening now, or this is another one of those stories like King David and Moses and all the other stuff that we were getting in Sunday school. And as soon as I realized that it was like, real news from now, it was very, very exciting, and I wanted to be part of that.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So now skipping back to 1982, at that time, Menachem Begin was still prime minister of this country, and he had just signed a peace agreement with Egypt, and everybody thought that, there was going to be this cataclysmic change in Middle Eastern politics, and peace was just going to be rampant everywhere. Of course, we now know that that didn't really happen, but it was still a very exciting period in history for this country, and I wanted to be part of that.
Okay. So you were aware, and you were planning, I suppose, from a young age. Is that right?
Well, like I said, as soon as I realized that there was an actual state of Israel currently now in my lifetime, I wanted to be a part of that. Yeah, that really spoke to me.
Okay, so tell us the story when you broke the news to your parents.
Right. Well, I had just graduated from Ohio State University, and we all attended the graduation ceremony in the afternoon, and then we went out to dinner. And during dinner, they said to me, "So, what are you going to do now that you graduated from university?" I said, "Well, I'm going to go to Israel." They said, "That's nice. For how long?" They probably thought I was going to say like 2 weeks or a month. And I said, "Well, a year, and then we'll see." And they said, "What does that mean, we'll see?" I said, "Well, we'll see means if it's as good as I think at the end of the year, I'm probably going to just stay there." And they were like, "Well, when did this happen? How long have you been thinking about this?" I said, "Well, since I was like, I don't know, 8, 9 years old, I've been planning this." And they said, "Well, why didn't you talk to us about it?" I said, "Because I was trying to put off having this conversation."
Okay. So you come to Israel. You don't have any brothers or sisters. You're an only child. Your poor parents. You came here, and it seems like you stayed, right?
I did indeed stay. And my poor parents, my mother came back and forth to Israel so many times that she actually got a few free trips on frequent flyer miles.
Yeah.
My father, on the other hand, never came here, and he basically stopped speaking to me when I came to Israel.
Well, that's a shame. So tell us what it was like back then in 1982, and what did you do to get your life together? It's probably very different. I mean, it was different.
When I graduated, I had a button that I put on my graduation gown that said, "What do I do now that I know everything?" And that's really what it feels like when you graduate from university in America. But when I came here, I quickly realized that I didn't know everything. First of all, I didn't know the language very well. And second of all, I didn't really know how to get a job that would keep me in the lifestyle that I wanted to have. So
tell us what you learned. Tell us what you graduated with. What kind of education?
I had a degree in agriculture. The department was the Department of Poultry Science at Ohio State University. It doesn't exist anymore. It was merged with animal science. But in order to try to get ahead here, I fairly quickly went back to school. I think I started my my master's degree in 1983, and thank God for socialism. The government, the Ministry of Absorption, paid for my second degree, and then I got a job after that. Then wound up. My boss told me that if I really wanted to get anywhere, I should go back to school and get a PhD, and that somehow, I don't know who paid the tuition, but I never did.
Okay, so slow down. You're a scientist then. You learned agriculture.
I'm a scientist. Yeah, I'm a scientist.
Okay, you learned agriculture in Cleveland, at the University of Ohio, I guess. And
Ohio State is in Columbus, right?
Okay. And what did you learn at your master's? Tell me about your master's degree here in Israel. Where did you do that? And
my master's degree was in Rehovot, Faculty of Agriculture of Hebrew University in Rehovot. The reason that I chose that faculty is because the Hebrew University has a very high opinion of itself. And if I would have wanted to go to the College of Arts and Sciences, they would have made me do like 3.5 years of remedial studies to catch up.
Okay, so when you were learning in Rehovot, and that's not the Weizmann Institute, you're at the Hebrew University.
No, it's across the street from the Weizmann Institute. I always tell people I did my master's degree in Rehovot and let them think I went to Weizmann.
I see what you're doing. That's nice. That's like saying I went to school in Boston and hoping people think it's Harvard. I get it.
Right.
Okay, so you're a single guy. You're doing your master's, and the government is helping you pay. You have savings. Afterwards, you, I guess, found your way into Israeli society. Yeah.
Right. Well, during that period of time when I was living in Rehovot, I had a roommate who was roughly my age, who had made aliyah from Brazil. He and I got along famously. We're still friends now, 20 some odd years later. I guess it's 30 some odd years later, actually.
Go on.
And the government paid for my tuition, and my stipend as a master's degree student was around $250 a month. And somehow I managed to kind of live on that.
Okay. Well, when you're a single guy, and this is before the era of, technology and smart technology, what did you really need? Some bread, some milk, right? And
Right, some bread and milk and toilet paper. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about this also in preparation for this interview. In those years, I didn't have a washing machine. I did all my laundry in the bathtub.
Okay. Look, if there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly.
Where, life is different today. These kids, and I hate to say it, but these kids just have a different life and a different expectation of life. And they're just so, it's sad. It kills them, but they're just lazy. The kids today are just lazy. They have things at the touch of a button. They don't know what it's like to ride a bike, to wait in line, to do your own shopping and your own cooking, because everything here is so easy. You can buy stuff cheap, ready to go. Kofik, 6 shekel for a salad. It's different. It's a different life. It's a different lifestyle. And you think back during that time, it was a simpler time, and in many respects, very nice.
Right. We were talking about this earlier in preparation. When I moved into my apartment in Rehovot, about half the lease was about what I had to do if the phone company called about installing a phone, because the landlord was moving to Germany. That's why he was renting the apartment. And he had been on a waiting list to get a telephone for 5 years.
Okay, so you're skipping a very important point here. Back then, nobody had a phone, and a lot of people didn't have private phones.
I'm trying to bring up this point. I lived in that apartment for 3 years, and when I left the apartment after 3 years, there still was no phone in that apartment.
Right.
And that was not unusual. I mean, a lot of people that I knew in Rehovot, even people who were older and more established than me, didn't have phones in their home. And certainly cell phones, they hadn't even been invented yet. I mean, just didn't exist.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. How many television stations were there at that time?
Well, there were 2, Israel and Jordan. Actually, in Rehovot, we could get something called Middle East TV, which was from Lebanon.
It was a different world. Now, I want you to give us some advice for our listeners. Stick around, everyone. We'll be right back to hear Sinai's advice.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
and me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Hello, I am Walter Bingham. If you want to hear the news behind the news and the true perspective on world affairs, then the Walter Bingham File is the program for you. We bring you interviews with the movers and shakers, political commentaries, and on-the-spot reports of events as they happen. All here every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Israel time, 9 a.m. Eastern time. And it's all archived on our website. Make it a date.
Welcome back to Returning Home. We're continuing our talk with Sinai. He's going to give us a little bit of advice for people today making aliyah. Now, I want you to give us some advice for our listeners who are concerned and who are still on the fence with coming to Israel. What piece of advice can you give them to get them moving?
Well, if you say, I'd like to go to Israel, but you're never going to come here. You just have to decide that you're going to do it. And once you do it, it's like jumping into a pool. when you first jump in, it's like really shocking and the water's cold. And then after a few minutes, it's all right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're moving to another country, it's maybe not a few minutes, it's maybe a few months or even a few years. But you eventually get used to it.
That's right.
But you have to want to do it.
That's right. And you should want to do it. Do you think you'd have to want to do it for the right reasons, or do you think it doesn't matter?
Well, looking back, I'm not sure exactly what my reasons were. I didn't really have any solid prospects as a fresh college graduate in the United States. And it just seemed interesting. So I came to check it out, and it was good.
Okay,
I mean,
so you came here
at
young.
that time, there was still a lot of people, and I still meet people occasionally. I met a guy last year who told me his life story. He walked here from Iraq with his family when he was a little boy. And when they got here, they lived in a tent with no running water for the first 2 weeks.
Right.
So there's still people like that out there.
Yeah.
And my experience relative to his, piece of cake.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It was. It's all relative. What do you have to say to people who hear your story when you were, young, unattached, fresh college graduate, and they are middle-aged with a mortgage, children, and they have always wanted to come to Israel? You think you have any advice for people like that?
Well, their circumstances are a lot more complicated than mine were when I came, but you can always do it. I mean, if you own real estate, you can sell it, and then you have money to do something somewhere else. And if you have a job, you can quit your job and get a different job somewhere else.
Right.
But you have to really want to do it.
Right. It's a leap of faith.
And Americans who do the equation in dollars and cents, I don't think anybody is ever going to make more money by coming to Israel than by staying in the United States. But there's a lot of other things in life that have value. I mean,
That's right.
I raised 7 kids and I have 19 grandchildren. I'm 60 years old.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Yeah, right.
And I'm
That's
not
right.
I'm not done yet. I still have an unmarried daughter.
Okay, that's a nice way of looking at it. I agree with you. Totally different values here. It's not about money.
And eventually, I don't know how much money I would have had if I stayed in America, but I live in a house that's on a piece of land that has fruit trees in the yard.
Yeah.
I make my own olives every year.
Right.
I mean, it's not so bad.
Right. It's not so bad. With those parting words, I want to thank you for joining us and sharing your story, Sinai. Always wonderful to talk to you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I hope all of you listening out there gained some insight and inspiration from Sinai's story. And if you have any questions.
Time for one more thing.
Yeah.
For any young Jewish men out there listening to this show, it's a lot easier to meet a nice Jewish girl who wants to live in Israel than in America.
You're right. haMoed. Toda rabah.
My pleasure. Have a good day, Natalie.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I think that was very insightful and important to hear and to discuss. And, some people will criticize me and say, Natalie, people today want to move to Israel and maintain their lifestyle. And others have told me this on the air. Some of you remember Zezi and I having a little fight when he told me people don't want to come here and rough it. They want to come here and live in Beit Shemesh and live in Ra'anana and live in Efrat and live the way they lived in America, and they should. And I didn't like that, and I'll tell you why. Israel's a different country, and when you come here, you have to be prepared and like willing to live in a different country. And it doesn't really matter what the reasons are. You could be a Zionist, you could be an adventurer, you could like the beach, you could love Jewish history, you could be part of the people who want to make a difference here and build and be part of the future here. It doesn't really matter why. But like Sinai said, and I agree, you really have to want to come. And if all you're doing is making calculations and comparisons on, will I live better there, better here, how much money do I need, it's not really, a want. That's not a desire. I started reading a book just during Shabbat. I'm reading a book called A Bintel Brief, and it's letters from the forward, from the Yiddish forward, which, as many of you know and remember, was a very popular Yiddish newspaper in America, I believe in New York, but it did gain countrywide circulation, a large circulation. And there was a section in there, like a Dear Abby. And this paper was popular, at the end of the 1800s, I believe, until recently. I think it's still going, but now it's nothing like it used to be. And there are letters all during that time, that immigration from Eastern Europe, from the 1880s all the way up through the 40s and 50s, these letters. And it is amazing the poverty that we had, our ancestors lived in New York. And not only, it's not the poverty that is, jarring, okay? But it's the fact that everybody seemed like happy and they just dealt with it. And I want to read you a section that I liked. It said, talk about integration. The Jewish households in those days set up no barriers between the young and old, the poor and the well-to-do, the misfit and the conformist. They all lived together, if not in harmony, then at least in a sense of common participation in the vitality of their district and that era. Today we have the old, who often wonder how to spend empty years. We have an entire new government-sponsored social science called geriatrics, which tries to guide us in the proper disposition of the American aged. The old people, right? And of course, we have the poor in another category, and the radicals, the intellectuals, the hard hats, the law and order boys, and God knows what else, each in their own compartments as American life grows more segregated, and we all approach an unfortunate condition of ultimate polarization. Now, isn't that amazing? Because today it's so true. And this is written way back, okay? 1880s. This may have actually been written in the 50s, okay? I think this was actually written in the 50s about the life in New York. In the ghettos of New York, the crotchety maiden aunt, grandmother and grandfather, the wild-eyed high school boy who had just begun to study Marx, Uncle Boris from uptown, and the boarder who studied Spinoza and Shakespeare until late at night every night, all sat at the same table and shared the same bread, soup, and potatoes. They also got involved in many-sided conversations and debates. Now that, I think, is very, very telling, because that does not happen today. But here in Israel, it does. And where does that happen here? It happens in the army. The army is the great melting pot of Israel. It doesn't matter where you came from, what kind of house you live in, what kind of home life you have, you're all thrown into that unit together. And, it goes on. This is the commentary to these briefs, these Dear Abby pictures, these Dear Abby letters. And when you read them, the stories that people write it about, unbelievable. But the world back then, and if any of you have read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, and these old books about the old life in the Lower East Side of New York, which is where the Jews lived, as many of you know, when we made, when we emigrated to America. It was just such a different world, and it was such a rich world. But if you remember the way the immigrants looked at America is the way immigrants should look at Israel. And it's the way I looked at Israel. I get very excited being here, being in my own house, watching each plant grow, watching my children grow and speak Hebrew and master the language and master the culture. I'm very proud. My kids are all working now. It is the haMoed Pesach vacation. I have a daughter who's waitressing across the street. I have a son who's parking cars, and my 2 older boys are in the Kinneret with their friends. I'm proud of them. I'm proud of them. And when all of you come to Israel, you'll see your children grow and bloom and become Israeli too, and become independent in ways that you'll never be able to. But it's okay. It's okay, because I'm willing to pay that price. And we all should be. It's not a matter of how big our house will be, how many cars we'll have. It's like, what will your children be like? And what will their children be like? You're growing here. You're growing a whole tribe. It's very exciting, just like what Sinai said. He's 60 years old and has 19 grandchildren? Not bad. We are just about out of time. I want to thank you all for joining us for this special Chol haMoed Pesach show. And wherever you are, enjoy the rest of the holiday, and especially the last night, eating the matzah, finishing it all up. It's really an exciting time. I never enjoyed Pesach growing up, but I really enjoy it here. It's special. It's different.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
If you're hearing this message, everyone else can too. Advertise with Israel News Talk Radio and get your message out to people. We'll build a personalized package for you. Contact advertising at israelnewstalkradio.com.
Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey, this is Jake in Anchorage, Alaska, and I love listening to all the super interesting interviews and up-to-date information on what's happening in Israel.
Hello, this is Anna King, originally from London, now living in Israel. And what can I say? Israel News Talk Radio is my cup of tea.
My name is Bhaskar. I'm from India, and I love listening because you get to know the truth and wonderful voices from this lovely country.
Mom! Okay, wait a minute. Hi, this is Chava Dax, and I'm calling from the rolling hills of Ma'ale Adumim, just north of Jerusalem. I always listen to Israel News Talk Radio to get all the latest news and commentary and to keep me up to date every day.
This is Sarah Dax from Ma'ale Adumim, and I'm 12. I wish Israel News Talk Radio was boring so my mom wouldn't listen to it all the time. Mom!
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.